the beginning that the result of my experience mainly in the public sector is what informs my presentation today. And I will share my, give me a minute to share my PowerPoint here. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Agapi, we can see your slides, but not your presentation.
What do you mean? You
not in presentation mode. You need to press the trapezoid shape at the bottom.
Then you need to share your screen, not just the PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's happened before.
Brilliant.
Can you see that now? Okay. So, first of all, I must say that all the examples I'm going to use are from Greek state schools. Some details may not be familiar to our foreign attendees, so I will have to say a few words. And for the beginning, I'm going to show a few pictures which will make sense to our Greek attendees, but I will say a few words for our foreign attendees. You can see this, I guess. Has that slide changed? Probably yes. Okay. So this is
yes, it has.
Yeah, a quite famous case of femicide that shook the society, the Greek society. This is another case of a university student who was the target of wild bullying in his school for acting gay, not even manifesting behavior or homosexual behavior so much. And then he went missing, and then he was found dead, having committed suicide. This is a very, very wild case of a gay person who was beaten to death by shopkeepers and civilians in the center, and with policemen present there. This is another case of a student, 15 years old, who committed because he was the target of bullying at school because he was gay. This is another thing, protest from parents in schools, in certain schools in Greece, because they didn't want refugee children attending the school along with their own children. And finally, last year, when there was those wildfires in northern Greece and everywhere, but in northern Greece, it's what this happened. It was, they found out some refugees, illegal refugees who had entered Greece, and they accused them of having set the fires. And the shocking thing was that, of course, it went on media, and the shocking thing was the comments of underneath their pictures. If you can see, it's all of them burning, burn them and burn them. So I guess we are all appalled by the things that are happening in our society. And the reason I'm showing these pictures and referring to these cases is to remind you that all these people were once our students, both the victims and the murderers or bullies. They were in our classrooms, we taught them, we never thought they would end up this way, or maybe we suspected things. But what I'm trying to pinpoint here is that I want to question the omnipotence of teachers. And when people say that, okay, it's the teacher's fault, it's the education's fault, it's all a question of education, I would like to doubt the truth of this. We are not omnipotent. These phenomena, these cases are the result of multiple factors, with the family being number one, I would say, but certainly it's not our fault entirely, or it's not our deficit, it's the deficit of our education. Of course, we are there to change the world. Of course, we are there to make a difference, but let's be aware of what we can do and where our limits stop. And this leads us to two questions that Abraham Maslow once asked his students. How good a society does human nature permit? And how good a human nature does society permit? Maslow was a humanist, and being a humanist, he believed that human nature is basically good. However, he was wondering about the limitations of human nature because it is affected by society, factors, environmental factors around us. If we paraphrase his questions, we could ask, how inclusive a society do schools permit? And how inclusive schools does society permit? We have this tendency for years now, we have had it to declare our schools inclusive, meaning that we are open to any kind of diverse population, usually referring to children with educational needs, special needs. But the thing is that our schools are far from being really inclusive, and it's also, there's this interplay between society and schools and education that may have different results than those we wish for. So let's clarify these concepts. Diversity is what we see in our classrooms. Diversity is a fact. We have different populations in our factors, they are there, but inclusion is action. It's not just a fact, it's something that we have to do to make people feel respected, valued, and welcomed, according to Werner Myers, who has done a wonderful work in inclusion. So we have to move from well-meaning, which is, yes, we accept everybody in our classroom, to well-doing. We have to do things to be inclusive. And Werner Myers puts it here beautifully, saying diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. So we have, and we welcome our students in our classrooms, but do we really ask them to dance? Do we involve them, engage them in everything we do together? Do we do things that will make them feel that they are welcomed and valued and respected in our classrooms? And I'm talking about the full spectrum of inclusion. I don't just mean children with special needs, which is the first thing we think about when we talk about inclusion. I'm talking about teaching in schools like inner city schools in New York, where the writer of this book, Peter McLaren, had experienced in and wrote this book. He's one of the theorists and activists of critical pedagogy. And even better, I would recommend that you watch this TV show. It's The Wire, especially season 4, which focuses on schools, and you will see what inclusive schools, real different cases, diversity of population means in a school where it's mostly for kids from the projects, which means Black kids mostly, whose only ambition, their biggest ambition is to be accepted in a gang as members and sell drugs on a street corner. And then you'll see how capable you are as an inclusive teacher. So on the road to inclusion, we would like to see something like this. This is an actual building in Chania, in a town in Crete. And as you can see, we have the Christian bell tower and the Islamic minaret standing by side. And strangely enough, there were periods where Kenya was under the Islamic occupation, or they were a Christian place, of course. And strangely enough, neither culture decided to demolish one of the two, either the tower or the Islamic minaret. And I think that this is something that we have to get used to, because our societies are now diverse, and we have to get used to seeing one side by side, like we want to see our students standing side by side in our classrooms. So on the road to inclusion, let's wonder, is our willingness or our knowledge or our decision to be inclusive enough? Is it entirely up to us? Okay, are we omnipotent? And how open is this road? What are the obstacles to it? And what can we do? These are the things that we are going to explore. So let's examine the obstacles to inclusion, first of all, one by one. First of all, it's society, actually, okay? Because society stigmatizes certain categories of people. People have certain attitudes, they hold certain beliefs, and they pass them on from generation to generation, and we are affected by the attitudes around us. And parents especially interfere in our work, they interfere in the schools, they believe that they have to make their own contribution to the school and affect our decisions or dictate our decisions. For instance, like this case when in the school where parents gathered outside the gates of the school the first day that the school was to accept refugee children. The school environment itself. What about the human resources? What kind of teachers are there in the school? What beliefs do they hold? Okay, do we make teaching accommodations to cater for everyone's needs? Do we create this famous school climate in such a way as to be welcoming and responding to the needs of all different populations and kinds of children? And also, administrative decisions can be an obstacle to inclusion, and I will give you an example. I don't know if the Greek attendees remember this child. This is Amir. He was a Syrian child, a refugee, attending a Greek school. He was in the last class. And as you know, on our national holidays, we hold parades, and schools participate, and one of the students holds the flag, the Greek flag at the parade, which is a great honor. Now, on the year he was there, the decision who is going to be the flag bearer was decided by draw from all the students. Now it's today it's all from the students with an A marks, okay? But that was from all the students, and the result of the draw was that Amir would hold the flag. Well, the school principal himself decided that he wanted to avoid parents protesting, and he told Amir that he was not to hold the flag, and he was to carry the school sign instead. But this became known, so some activists started protesting, so everybody knew. And it went to court, and anyway, parents started indeed after this announcement, indeed started to protest. Amir had to stop going to school. He stayed at home, but even he was visited at home, and as you see, his windows were broken by stones thrown by parents and even classmates. Okay, so that was caused by the school principal himself, who was punished eventually, but anyway. The education system in Greece, our system is essentially monocultural and monolingual. We teach language as foreign language, especially English and French, but the culture is the dominant culture and the dominant language is Greek. So it's hoping to integrate populations, but not to include them, I said, but instead to integrate them, to make them as similar as Greeks as possible. For instance, the mother tongues of certain children are not taught in schools, only in special programs, usually at the initiative of some administrators, okay? And also there was a decision after this opposition from parents for immigrants to attend at different hours. And there is also this morning prayer. It's by law, we have to pray in the morning at the General Assembly. Every school has to do that. And there is this one Christian prayer, Our Father, etc. What happened, I would like to remind my Greek colleagues, what happened in one school in Athens, when in a school where 78% of the student population were immigrants, non-Christians, the principal decided that they would not say this prayer, the Christian prayer in the morning, but instead they would recite a poem by a Greek poet, famous one, which said, I'll translate it for the sake of our foreign attendees. Dear God, we are fine. Please, God, make sure that every child has a river of milk, lots of stars and lots of songs. Please, God, make sure that every child is well, and so we will not feel embarrassed for our joy. The principal, she was also doing other things like teaching the parents the Greek language so that they could help their children in the afternoon, etc. But she was persecuted. She was kicked out. She was taken to court. After a number of years, she was finally acquitted. But in the meantime, she had developed cancer and she died. And there is also the hidden curriculum that we know, which refers to unofficial norms, unwritten rules, and unspoken expectations that we have in our schools regarding the curriculum, the program, the syllabus, the behaviors, etc. So it's also behaviors and values of the dominant culture context in which all teaching and learning is situated. And there are implicit academic, social, and cultural messages not formally communicated. We will not see them written down, but they are there and they dominate the culture. And it dictates the right way to think, to speak, to look, and behave in school. So there is not much flexibility, and usually it's not very apparent to us that we follow a hidden curriculum because it permeates everything. The thing is that the hidden curriculum is not only an obstacle, it can also safeguard inclusion, because indeed the dominant culture says that we have to be inclusive. So those teachers or any other kind of the school staff would like to, be less inclusive or be insulting to some children, they meet this obstacle of the hidden curriculum. So it works both ways. And finally, which is my point today, there is one more barrier, which is the teacher bias. Teachers are people too, and the unconscious biases they may have can affect the way that they interact and how they may favor certain groups of students and disregard others. So we see them having lower expectations from students with disabilities or minorities whose first language is not Greek. And it comes as self-fulfilling prophecy here. They may discriminate between boys and girls, yes, even today. They may show microaggressions. That's a behavior which is covert, subtle, perhaps unintentional, maybe through grimaces or apparently, well, innocent, let's say, comments, which can be verbal or non-verbal, okay, with the body language, or environmental. Where do we make them sit? Where do we have them? Do we invite them to be near us? Do we go near them, etc., etc.? Well, unfortunately, in 2020, there was a paper published in journal which examined bias, the racism, specifically racism among teachers. And it was found that the percentages of racist teachers were not significantly different from that of the general population. So what we see in society, the beliefs, the attitudes, the behaviors, we can see them in our schools too. And I'm not talking just about Greece, I'm talking everywhere. Okay, so the main question for today is, how inclusive a teacher do you permit yourself to be? Do you examine yourself? Do you know the answers to this question? And the question to find out, let's have a little test here. I would like you to think of this question. Would you respect, value, welcome a student who is or does something? I'm going to show you certain categories of students and think whether you would feel comfortable and a fully functioning teacher with this particular kind of students. Okay, you can write your answers in the chat box, but you don't have to. Okay, this is quite private. A student who has ADHD, hyperactivity, and disrupts the lesson. Okay. A student with oppositional defiant disorder, which is something more serious. It's clinical, and it's the student that may be very rude, use dirty language, being defiant and disobedient all the time. A bully, a person who bullies other children. Delinquent students, especially in high schools, maybe students who deal drugs, let's say. A drug dealer, a Roma student, an immigrant, a neo-Nazi, especially in when they are in teenage years in high school and they are active, an anarchist, a non-Christian or a non-Jewish or a non-Muslim, whatever you are, an atheist, a fundamentalist, religiously fundamentalist, a member of the LGBTQ community, an anti-feminist, a sexist person, or a feminist. So personally, I have to admit that I wouldn't feel comfortable, I would feel awkward with at least 3 of these categories. And I wouldn't say that they would be the luckiest students to have me as a teacher, because I'm not sure I could control myself or be that welcoming. Anyway, the thing is that there is a trap for us, the trap of believing that we are neutral, that we go into our classroom to teach English, let's say, and nothing else. Well, dominant ideologies are invisible but pervasive. we carry them and we transmit them through our lesson, even when we talk about passive voice, the examples we choose, the comments we make, whatever, okay, we transmit the dominant ideology or the ideology that we have, okay? And as Paulo Freire said, washing one's hands of the conflict between the powerful and the powerless means to side with the powerful, not to be neutral. There is no neutrality. We cannot be neutral. If there is, you can understand this in the case of bullies. When somebody bullies somebody else at school, you cannot be neutral. Otherwise, you side with the bully, because the bully is the strong one here, is the powerful one here. So, if the first thing is to be aware of that and know that we are not neutral and know what we believe, and then stand with Parisia by our beliefs and by inclusive practices. So Parisia is a Greek word, but Michel Foucault has explained it in English, saying, well, not in English, translated in English, is a verbal activity in which a speaker expresses his personal relationship to truth and risks his life because he recognizes, as you can see, this is not politically correctly written. We have this male pronoun back then in the years that he wrote it. So he recognizes truth-telling as a duty to improve or help other people as well as himself. In Parisia, the speaker uses his freedom and chooses frankness instead of persuasion, truth instead of falsehood or silence, the risk of death instead of life and security, criticism instead of flattery, and moral duty instead of self-interest and moral apathy. So do we want our teachers to be heroes? Okay, maybe that's a big thing to ask, but there are little things we can do. And I'm going to talk about these things that we can do as teachers now. First of all, self-awareness. I'm repeating this from the beginning of my talk. Do we know what we are, what we believe? Do we know what biases we hold, conscious or unconscious, because our unconscious biases come to the surface every so often? What feelings do we have towards certain students? What do we think about them? Our behaviors, how do we behave towards them? What fears do we hold? I mean, are we afraid of the principal of the school? Are we afraid of the parents? Do we adapt our behavior to their demands? How much parisia can we manifest? And do we challenge stereotypes when we hear them in the school? Okay. How do we develop our awareness? Because we are also products of our upbringing, of our families, of our environment, and the small society we live in. So if we want to change or question or examine our attitudes, let's start with educating ourselves. This is Paulo Freire, of course, you know him. He is the father of critical pedagogy. There's a lot of critical pedagogy in this presentation. And this is, I would say, the Bible, the gospel of education, the pedagogy of the oppressed. If you haven't read it, which I believe you have, but anyway, you have to read it. And it has to do with some educational projects that he started in Brazil for illiterate, actually practically illiterate farmers. And you might ask, why, what does it have to do with today and our problems of today? But if you read it, you will see that it has everything to do. It shows the way. Once you read this book, then you can move to, you can find your way to other books of this kind. This one, I don't know if you recognize him, but I was so happy to find this picture of his. It's Noam Chomsky in his youth, Maria, yes, I can see your surprise. I was not surprised too at the beginning. And he has a book on education, actually on miseducation, and where he describes how education may mislead people, may degrade people. Okay, what may happen in schools that are not really towards inclusion. The next thing we can do is collaboration. Unfortunately, we cannot be the one nightingale that will bring spring, not by ourselves. We need people with us. We need allies in the school and in the community, because for one thing, we might get into trouble at some points, okay? We need to form teams and work together. And whenever we feel insecure or unsure about what we are doing, or when we are in trouble, we seek support and mentorship from people who know or have done things before us. And whatever we do, we can ask for feedback from our allies. Reflection. Questioning ourselves, reflecting on what we did every time we do it. Paulo Freire says that those who authentically commit themselves to the people must re-examine themselves constantly. We are committed to people. We are committed to our students and the future of this society and this world. And we have to re-examine ourselves all the time. And I'm going to give you a personal example here. 2 years ago, it was Christmas, and I wanted to do something Christmassy in my classroom. I decided not to, to teach the vocabulary, the usual vocabulary we teach in our these days in our classrooms. I was in a classroom of 11-year-olds, and I decided to focus on two concepts: the concept of solidarity and the concept of peace, which are concepts connected to Christmas. Okay, so I told them about this famous football match between German and English people during the First World War to, celebrate peace. And when they sang the carols, etc., because it was Christmas then. That was one thing. And for solidarity, I decided to show them, to talk about the famine in Ethiopia some decades ago, and the concert that was organized to government to raise money for Ethiopia then. But this led us to, hungry populations and starvation. And I showed them videos and pictures, etc. Even the picture with the vulture waiting for the boy to die, And there was a wonderful discussion with the students. They participated, and they were curious, and they were asking questions. And I was so happy that they participated like that. Only that the next day, I received this email from a mother who said that her son went home very upset because he saw those videos. And he believes that if I restricted my lesson to religion and the birth of Christ, etc., people would be happier and we would have a better world, because these are not things for children. Well, I don't have to say that I don't agree with her, okay? And I could see the result of in my classroom. However, I had to question what I did, and my taking for granted that my students at the age of 11 knew about these things, at least had an idea about, let's say, starvation in the world, and that they may have seen some pictures or videos already, or that they would stand this heavy stuff, that they were able to, be there and watch something like that without feeling so upset. At least one thing I should have done was to warn the students that there is going to be some very wild stuff on the video, and if they didn't feel well, they could leave the classroom anytime they wanted. That was the least I could have done. I didn't. I was just happy to share these ideas with my students and went right away to showing the videos and have these discussions. Okay, so this is an example of re-examining what we do every day. Another thing is to develop empathy, do everything to get in other people's shoes. Paulo Freire says about the dialogue, as a form of empathy, and says that dialogue further requires an intense faith in humankind, and I can't imagine why one would choose to become a teacher if they had no intense faith in humankind, because we work for the future. Okay, faith in the power to make and remake, to create and recreate, faith in their vocation to be more fully human, and that's what we should be, which is a privilege of an elite, but the birthright of all, because not all people are treated as human. So we need to embrace diversity as a fact, to try to understand the experiences of others and their perspectives and their beliefs, okay? To listen actively to what they have to say, to listen to ourselves what we have to say, to be happy to teach and be happy to be their teachers, and they have to see that, okay? And show our vulnerability as opposed to perfection. And I would like to make a comment here regarding social media, especially if our students are of older ages and they follow us. Presenting an image of ourselves as being the happiest, the most successful, having the perfect family, the perfect partner, the perfect students, etc., and traveling here and there, this may stop our students from sharing their truth. Okay, they may hesitate to reveal their own misfortunes, their own unhappy life, their own unhappy conditions. And I have an example here of how we can show empathy or not. Only yesterday, I showed a video with chores. Okay, we were teaching household chores, and I showed my students of 9 years old a video with a child who did chores because he wanted to help his mother so she would go to his performance, the theatrical performance, because she was so overloaded and overwhelmed with household chores that she didn't even look at the invitation that he gave him. And one of my students, who has been abandoned by his mother and lives with his father only, told me, "Miss, I didn't like the video. Fortunately, he's a bilingual, so I could speak to him in English and nobody could understand, because it reminded me of my mother, who never came to whatever I did, and he didn't care what I did." Okay, we spoke a little in English. I told him that it's okay to cry because you could see this lump in his throat. Okay, but then during the break, I went to the teacher's office, and it was his regular teacher there, the Greek teacher, I mean, and some others. And I told her what happened. And another teacher said, "Okay, we all have traumas." And I said, "Okay, your traumas belong to the past. This child is living his trauma right now." Okay, so it's not always easy to show empathy and understand and get in the shoes of others, but we have to. And the final thing I have to say, it's exposure. We need to expose ourselves to different kinds of populations, people and cultures that we are not familiar with. It's not what we are used to. If we are afraid or avoiding certain kinds of people, this will not help our job as inclusive teachers. Let's try to mix with those people. And I will tell you a story. It's Michael Albert's story. Michael Albert is an economist, actually, but he was a student of Noam Chomsky in MIT, and he's an activist in education and economy. He told us a story that is the manifestation of what Paulo Freire says, a lot of Paulo Freire today, that education is an act of love and thus an act of courage. We have to be courageous. If we love people, we have to be courageous and leave our comfort zone and move to other places that we don't know much of, because we need to gain knowledge and be exposed to new experience, new cultures, etc. So this Michael Albert came to Greece in 2010, and he gave 2 lectures, which I attended. Maybe in the economy part, I didn't understand much, but I will never forget a story that he told us. He said that he was invited in a university by, which was very progressive, and the students were, you know, activists, human rights and democracy, etc., etc. And he was invited for a lecture there. So on the way to the university, he was going on foot, and he saw a bar, and he stopped to just look at the surroundings, see what kind of people they were, and have a beer or something. And it was that kind of bar, which was full of mostly Black people, with screens on the wall showing wrestling matches or football, etc. And people were playing snookers, drinking, etc. Okay, he could see that this was a subculture of the place. And he went to the university, he started talking to the students, and he told them about this bar that he stopped by and asked them, do you ever go to that bar? And they started laughing. And he said, why are you laughing? Well, they answered, but you saw what kind of bar it is. You saw those people, they are almost illiterate. They are not educated. We have nothing to talk with them. They only care about football and starting fights and showing their physical strength, etc. Why would we go to that place? What good would it do to us? And he said to them, and you want to change the world, right? That's it. That was all from me. There is 10 minutes left if you want to.
You have
ask
taken
something.
our breath away. What a beginning to our conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, too.
This is my time to invite our participants to join in with their questions or even their comments. To be honest, I would really like if we could actually play the game. I was trying to see my biases, which students I can deal with and which students I cannot deal with.
Do you want me to share the slide?
It would be a great idea if our colleagues are interested in it. I found it extremely interesting because we tend to think of, you know, people who are suffering from something, not people who are causing the trauma. And I think this is something we need to discuss as teachers. So yes, in the past few years, we have done something for people who are being bullied, a very little something, might I say, but something. What have we done with the bullies? And this is also a thing that needs to receive our attention.
Okay, if I have to start, okay? I would never stand a neo-Nazi in my classroom. I mean, being
I had one.
Yeah,
I had one, and I found out when it was
Yeah.
too late.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Usually it's too late because these children are, you know, they're grasped from an early age by those evangelists of Nazism, and it's very for children. I think that for children who feel defeated in life, this family of Nazis, which appears to be so powerful, is a very good support for them. They feel supported. They feel they are backed up, okay, by them, and it's very difficult to, okay. So I wouldn't feel comfortable with them. I mean, I wouldn't also feel comfortable with anti-feminists, and believe me that I hear anti-feminist and sexy comments from my little children in a primary school every day. Like yesterday, we were talking about cars, transportation in the past, and I was telling them that there was, at the time when in Greece there were only 5 cars at the beginning of the 20th century, there was an accident, a fatal accident, in Ermou Street. A car, which was, you know, a car of that time, killed a pedestrian. And there were only 5 cars all over Greece. And a student said, it must have been a woman driving. Okay, of course I had a discussion after that. Okay, so these are my 2 no-nos. And I would say that I wouldn't stand a bully, you know, an older child bullying a younger child, etc. These 3 categories would be, well, I wouldn't feel comfortable. So if you want to share
I'll go next because I suggested it. Okay, regarding not a problem with the first bullet point, not a problem with the second bullet point. Third bullet point, I would like, it depends what kind of bully that would be. For example, I was thinking of being bullied myself and being in a way overtly threatened with violence because I was trying to help. Delinquent the same. If there was room for, you know, to make a connection and help, the fact that he's committed a crime wouldn't stop me. But whether or not he wants or she wants to move forward would be an issue. Drug dealer, the same. That might have been a boy or a girl that got involved in this without understanding how. So I wouldn't, you know, I don't think I would have a problem. With Roma people, I would probably find out a lot. I know very little about educating Roma people, but I would welcome it as a challenge. Immigrants, not a problem. Neo-Nazi, I said it. Anarchist, not a problem. I don't think religion has anything to do. We all have our religion. If somebody doesn't have their religion or any religion, that's not my problem. Fundamentalists, that's an interesting one. You have been very thorough. Depends on the type of fundamentalism. If we are talking about the kind that sends people to, you know, get guns and start shooting right and left, I'm against violence and the rhetoric of violence. I don't think I would have problems with LGBTQ people, but people who are anti-feminist or sexist would annoy me. I don't think, if they were careful, I don't think I would see it as a challenge. And I don't think I would have a problem with a feminist in the class, as long as they didn't want to get grades because they are feminists. So support me as a woman because I am a woman, and don't give grades to the men because they are men. Because then this is misunderstood.
That's not feminism.
That's not feminism. Exactly, it's misunderstood feminism. Okay, so that was mine. Vicky, do you have your hand up because you want to be next?
And
Okay,
Vicky, I think.
so Vicky is going next.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for this amazing presentation. I think that empathy is the first thing we need to teach our students when they're in the kindergarten, And because we can actually come up with empathy when they're 17 and 16. And I'm teaching in public high schools. It's my first year actually, in junior high school and high school. And I want to say something, I want to share, if I may, very, very briefly. A very bad experience we have recently had in junior high school was a bullying incident between girls.
Yeah.
But what we did after that, we were able to manage that. But I want to focus on what we did after that. We collaborated with the psychologist and the social worker of the school. And we had, for about a month or so, every week, we had psychotherapy sessions. So I was present during these sessions, and we were trying to identify what bullying is, who is the attacker, why we attack, and students created projects and all of these things. And somehow, I think that we managed up to a level. We didn't do the miracles, okay? We tried to set boundaries and limits and instill somehow the value, values and respect. What we notice is that a lot of students do not know what respect is, and they do not know how to apply this. So I think that apart from us teachers, it is important when we have students of all of, when we have students that I can see in front of me, like anarchists or drug dealers or anything, to cooperate with people who are at schools, like psychologists. They can help us a lot because we're not psychologists. We have not been trained to do that, although we could, but we haven't. And another point that I found interesting, because I had sexist comments in my class, like women are inferior, they're not even human beings, something like that. Of course, we need to set the limits, but it is important not to allow students to get into extremes, because any of these cases can get can reach the other side of the story, and generally to to try to balance things again. I know we my friend Margarita Kosio, who is here, once said we're superheroes. I think that's an understatement. We're not just the superheroes, we're more than this. We are required to do more than this, and we definitely need help. So let's get all the help we need from our school. Thank you, that was amazing. Thank you for this very, very enlightening talk. And thank you for the opportunity to share my my experience.
Okay, do we have any questions, any comments? In this case, I think we have a short 5-minute break, which I will use to simply stop the recording so that we can have separate entities. Thank you so much, Agapi. It was an honor to have you here. And this was an absolutely enlightening plenary and a great beginning to our conference.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you.
We will be back at in 5 minutes.